Your foot hits the brake before you even see the ball. Your heart races before you know why. This isn't a glitch. It's your brain's ancient survival circuit, and it's making decisions before you're even aware. You're driving down a familiar road when a child's ball bounces into the street. Before your conscious mind registers the color of the ball, before you form the word stop, your foot has already slammed the brake. Your hands have gripped the wheel. Your heart rate has spiked. This entire sequence, from perception to action, unfolds in roughly 300 milliseconds. That is less time than it takes to blink. By the time you consciously think, I need to brake, your brain has already saved a life. This phenomenon, the 0.3-second gap between stimulus and conscious awareness, is one of the most profound and unsettling discoveries in modern neuroscience. It suggests that much of what we consider thinking is actually post hoc storytelling. We are not the decision makers we believe ourselves to be. Instead, we are the narrators of decisions already made. In the early 1980s, physiologist Benjamin Libet conducted a now legendary experiment that sent shockwaves through psychology and philosophy. Participants were asked to flick their wrist at a moment of their choosing, while Libet measured their brain activity using EEG. They also watched a clock with a rapidly moving dot, noting the exact moment they felt the conscious urge to move. What Libet found was startling. A measurable buildup of brain activity, called the readiness potential, appeared roughly 550 milliseconds before the participants reported being consciously aware of their intention to move. In other words, the brain initiated the action a full half-second before the person decided to do it. Our conscious intention to act is not the cause of the action, Libet wrote. It is a latecomer, a witness to a decision already underway. Libet's work remains deeply controversial. Critics argue that the readiness potential may reflect general preparation rather than a specific decision. Others point out that participants in lab settings are performing trivial, meaningless actions, hardly equivalent to real-world moral or complex choices. Philosopher Daniel Dennett has argued that the point of decision is a convenient fiction. In reality, decision-making is a distributed, parallel process across multiple brain regions, not a single moment captured by a clock. There is no single, privileged moment of conscious will, Dennett wrote in Consciousness Explained. The brain is a massively parallel system, and the feeling of a unified decision is a useful illusion. Yet even with these caveats, the core finding stands. Conscious awareness lags behind neural activity. The 0.3-second gap is not a bug. It is a feature of how the brain processes the world. To understand why this gap exists, we must consider evolutionary pressure. A predator does not announce itself. A falling rock does not wait for you to weigh the pros and cons of dodging. The brain's survival architecture prioritizes speed over deliberation. When sensory information enters the brain, it takes two parallel routes, a phenomenon described by neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux as the low road and the high road. The low road is a direct, subcortical pathway that processes crude sensory features, shape, movement, loudness, in as little as 12 milliseconds. It triggers a rapid emotional response before the cortex has fully analyzed what is happening. This is why you flinch before you know what you are flinching at. The high road, by contrast, takes 200 to 300 milliseconds longer, providing detailed, contextual analysis. By the time this information reaches consciousness, your body has already acted on the low-road signal. More recent work by neuroscientist Carl Friston suggests that the brain is not merely reacting to stimuli, but actively predicting them. According to Friston's free energy principle, the brain continuously generates models of the world and updates them based on sensory input. When a ball bounces into the street, your brain has already predicted the trajectory, the likely outcome, and the necessary motor response, all before the visual cortex finishes processing the image. This predictive mechanism explains why athletes can react to a 100 mph fastball in under 400 milliseconds. They are not waiting to see the ball and then deciding to swing. Their brains have already modeled the pitch based on the pitcher's arm angle, release point, and hundreds of previous at-bats. The swing is a prediction, not a reaction. Consciousness is not a decision maker. It is a narrator, says neuroscientist David Eagleman. The implications of this timing gap extend far beyond simple motor actions. Research shows that emotional responses also follow this pattern. Your amygdala reacts to a threatening face before your cortex identifies whose face it is. This is why you might feel uneasy around someone without knowing why. your brain has already processed subtle cues of danger. Memory, too, is affected. The stories we tell ourselves about past events are often reconstructed after the fact, with our conscious mind filling in gaps to create a coherent narrative. This 0.3-second gap means that much of our emotional life is shaped by processes we never witness. We feel before we think, and that feeling is the brain's way of guiding us through a world that demands split-second survival decisions. So what does this mean for free will? If our brains decide before we do, are we just passengers in our own bodies? Not exactly. While the initial impulse may be unconscious, we retain the ability to veto an action in the final milliseconds before execution. Libet himself found that participants could consciously intervene and stop a movement even after the readiness potential had begun. This suggests that free will might not be about initiating actions, but about having the power to inhibit them. It's a subtle but crucial distinction. We may not be the authors of our first impulse, but we are the gatekeepers. The 0.3-second gap doesn't erase our agency, it reframes it. We are not the pilot, but we are the one who can say no at the last moment. The 0.3-second gap reveals a brain that's always a step ahead of us. If you found this valuable, share it with someone who loves understanding the mind.